Hello, everyone, and welcome to this pre-recorded webinar entitled CAM's Advocacy Program. My name is Pamela Zelski, and I'm CAM's Advocacy Manager. The purpose of this webinar is to share information with you about CAM's unique and robust advocacy program, as well as to provide you with information about advocacy in general and the California legislative process. Before we dive into CAM's program specifically, I think it would be helpful to start with the concept of advocacy. What is it, and can we as museum professionals advocate on behalf of our institutions? You may have noticed on the previous slide that I included the Webster's definition of advocacy, which is the act or process of advocating or supporting a cause or proposal. I dislike using the word we're trying to define in the definition itself, so I've included my own definition here as well. And that is, on the most basic level, advocacy is storytelling, and it covers a broad range of activities that seek to bring about social change. It's really about consistently showing up to talk to your elected officials about issues that impact museums. And it's an opportunity to share stories about your institutions with your legislators. I'm often asked if museum professionals can engage in advocacy. The simple answer is yes. Most museums are 501c3s, and we can, and in fact we should, engage in public policy dialogue that impacts our field and the communities we serve. There are some restrictions on our advocacy efforts, however, that I would like to highlight. We cannot engage in partisan politics or make candidate endorsements, for example. 501c3s can engage in legislative lobbying under either the IRS's substantial part test or by electing to operate under such activities under Section 501 subpart H of the tax code. If you have a staff member or a director who periodically meets with an elected official, it is highly unlikely that they are going to come close to meeting these limitations. You can find links to further information about how much lobbying a 501c3 can do on the CAM website. If your institution is not a 501c3 and you have questions about what limitations apply to you, I would recommend that you consult with your accountant or attorney. CAM's advocacy program primarily centers around legislation that is introduced in the California state legislature. Why is state advocacy so important? As the saying goes, all politics is local. State legislatures typically pass more pieces of legislation than Congress does. The average state legislature passes over 2.5 times as many bills as Congress does. In addition, nearly half of our members of Congress are former state legislators, and half of United States presidents got their start serving in state legislatures. Actively cultivating relationships at the state level is critical. As a state museum association, CAM is uniquely positioned to monitor state legislation and assess the impact it may have on the field here in California. For example, this past legislative session, we closely monitored over 40 bills that were introduced by the California state legislature, and we elected to either support, oppose, or watch these bills throughout the session. It might be helpful before moving on to offer a very brief and basic civics lesson on the legislative process here in California. The California state legislature is made up of two houses, the Senate and Assembly. I should mention that the California legislature operates on a 2-year session. For example, when the legislature reconvenes in January 2018, they will be in the 2nd year of their 2-year session. That means that some of the bills from last session will be held over and addressed when the session reconvenes. As the diagram on the screen indicates, bills are introduced in either the state Senate or Assembly, and they move through the process as outlined here. Once a bill has been approved by its house of origin, it then proceeds to the other house where the process is repeated. If both houses approve a bill, then it goes to the governor. So you may be wondering why we should, as museum professionals, care about advocacy. In other words, what's in it for me? Well, public policy is always changing, and engaging in advocacy helps keep all of us informed. Every session, new pieces of legislation are being introduced that impact our field directly or indirectly. This includes legislation that potentially could impact funding sources or regulations that could make it easier or more difficult for us to do our jobs. Engaging in advocacy enables you to help your museum and the field as a whole. It also provides us with an opportunity to be an active part of the democratic process and to positively influence change in our communities. And as people from AAM like to say, if we're not at the table, we could be on the table. We never want to be in a position where a legislator says after the fact that they wish they would have known a bill they supported was going to hurt museums in their district. It simply pays to be proactive. Advocacy also provides excellent opportunities for career development and networking, both within and outside the museum field. You might even find the process to be enjoyable and fun. So what does CAM's advocacy program consist of, and what does it mean for the field? CAM has an active and robust advocacy program that monitors state legislation here in California, fosters strategic initiatives to support museums, keeps our members and subscribers informed and involved, plans and coordinates advocacy-related events such as California Museums Month and Advocacy Day, and provides training and collaborates with other organizations through a number of state and national partnerships. This work is supported in large part by our Government Relations Committee. The majority of these dedicated committee members are also members of the CAM board. For more information about who serves on the Government Relations Committee or how you can be involved, please visit the CAM website. Every legislative session, CAM, with the support of our Government Relations Committee, monitors bills that could potentially have an impact on the museum field. We take positions on key bills, which include sending letters of support or opposition, calling legislative offices, or visiting with them in person, either in their district office or in Sacramento. It sometimes also means traveling to Sacramento to testify at legislative hearings. CAM also sponsors legislation, such as Assembly Bill 755, the California Museums for All bill, this past legislative session. I want to highlight that many of our board members or members in key legislative districts hit the pavement, so to speak, and advocated on behalf of California Museums for All, along with other bills CAM supported last session. These individuals are a voice for the museum field every session, not just this past one. They call and email their legislators' offices, they send in letters, they invite legislators to visit their museums, they meet with their legislator or legislative staff in their office, and they travel to Sacramento to provide testimony. We simply would not be as effective as we are without their constant commitment to come forward and be a voice for museums. You might be wondering how CAM decides to take a position on a piece of state legislation. We typically consider a number of factors when determining whether we are going to take a position on a specific bill. This is not intended to be a rigid formula, but rather a balancing test of a variety of factors. We look at the geographic scope that a piece of legislation could potentially reach. Will it impact just one city or region, or will it impact a large portion of the state? We look at the number of museums that might be impacted by the legislation as well. Is it just one museum, a number of museums, or all museums statewide? We also consider the number of disciplines that may be impacted. And finally, we assess whether the legislation will have a direct impact on the field or an indirect impact, such as an impact on nonprofits or schools. I do want to stress that CAM does not represent or advocate on behalf of just one institution. We focus on what's best for the museum field as a whole. In addition to monitoring legislation, CAM plans and coordinates advocacy-related events such as California Museums Month and an Advocacy Day at the Capitol in Sacramento. Both of these events have historically taken place in May. We schedule meetings and provide training along with advocacy toolkits for our board members so they can effectively advocate on behalf of the field in Sacramento. These toolkits are also on our website and are chock full of information. They include legislative briefs and materials on specific bills, along with policy positions, general pointers on meeting with your legislator, rules of engagement, and how to effectively use social media in your advocacy efforts. CAM also recognized legislators who have a strong commitment to the museum field by awarding them with our President's Award. This generally takes place each year during Advocacy Day. It's our way of saying thank you for their commitment and support to the field as a whole. Cultivating relationships is the basis of a successful and effective advocacy program, and that includes building relationships with other state and national organizations. CAM actively collaborates with a variety of state and national partners as listed here on the screen, and we support their efforts by responding to their calls to action. This year, there have been quite a few calls to action from AAM, or the American Alliance of Museums. CAM has joined efforts to support continued funding for IMLS, NEA, and NEH by signing letters of support, and we have also engaged in efforts to protect charitable giving. We strongly encourage the field to do the same, and we regularly share AAM's resources to make this task as easy and straightforward as possible. In addition, CAM is a proud supporter of AAM's Museums Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. In most years, a CAM staff member or a member of our board also travels to D.C. to participate in Museums Advocacy Day. It's a powerful experience to join together with hundreds of advocates from all over the country to make the case for museums on Capitol Hill. Museums Advocacy Day is taking place on February 26th and 27th, 2018, and if you haven't had an opportunity to attend, I would strongly recommend it. CAM is watching out for the field by monitoring state legislation, keeping you informed through our legislative updates, social media posts, calls to action, and materials on our website. Our calls to action also provide you with opportunities to get involved. We're here to support you and your advocacy efforts on behalf of the field. We provide tools and resources so that you can effectively build relationships with your legislators and feel prepared for calls and in-person visits. Our advocacy toolkits and a variety of how-to guides are all on our website for your information and use. I am also available to answer your questions and provide you with the support you need to be successful. I want to thank our current members for their support. Your membership supports this program and many more. We have many membership options, including individual, institutional, and business, available at a variety of price points, including a pay-what-you-can option. To learn more, please visit the CAM website. Thank you very much for watching and listening today. If you have any questions or would like additional information about CAM's advocacy program and how we can support your advocacy efforts, please feel free to contact me directly. Thank you.